for joining us for another episode of Deployed. My name is Michael Kiris. I'm a real estate investor and fund operator. And over the years, I've worked with a wide range of investors who have built success in very different ways: business owners, professionals, and operators, many of whom eventually start to ask the same question. Is there a smarter way to deploy capital, especially retirement capital, outside of the stock market? So on Deployed, I'm not here to pitch. I'm here to understand how successful people think about capital, risk, and long-term decisions, and to explore how tools like the self-directed IRA may or may not fit into that thinking. Today, I'm joined by Shelly Greatland. She's the CMO and VP for Faro Technologies, running global marketing organizations. How are you doing today, Shelly? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing amazing here in Austin, Texas, where it's a bit warm outside.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to do what we can to stay cool and enjoy the summer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now tell me a little bit about the company you work for. What do you guys do? What's your value proposition?
Faro Technologies is a phenomenal company, founder-led, tech-led from the beginning. And they really had two sides of the business. They use lasers and point cloud technology to do reverse manufacturing on one side of the business, and the other side is more focused at construction technology. But the last year has been pretty exciting for Faro, where we were actually recently acquired by Amatech. And so Amatech has brought a ton of operational excellence into the business and are doing some really cool things with the Faro technology and the people and the culture. So lots of change in that space.
Oh, I bet. Fun times. Sometimes I remember being part
Yeah.
of an organization that got bought out by a larger organization.
hmm
Exciting new opportunities. Some people are a little nervous, but it sounds like you're ready to tackle it head on. Especially being a leader over there, that's exciting. Awesome, awesome. So before we talk investing, I'd love to get some context on. Tell us about your path to success. Like, what did that look like? How did that evolve?
Well, I think success is TBD at this point, always striving for that, right? From an academic standpoint and career, started as an engineer, very technical, kind of academic foundation, and then worked my way up into B2B technical organizations. I think related to this topic, lots of learning, right? What does it mean to get your money to work for you? Michael, you and I spoke briefly earlier, and I see so many people working their tails off, right, in their careers, in their jobs, and then just to see that money maybe not grow for them or not work as hard as they worked to get it. And so I'm passionate about your topic, and I love to learn in this space. But I think there's always learning, right? The market's always changing, options are always changing, what works, what doesn't, the dynamics, the economy. So I think it's one you want to use that growth mindset for, so that you're always up to speed and relevant.
Nice, nice, nice. And so, digging a little bit deeper, like, did you always know that you wanted to be in this executive role that you're in now? Was that like a gradual transition? How did that?
Mm. Yeah, no, not at all. I was never one of those people that like knew a title or knew a role that I wanted. It was really about, as cliche as it might sound, I love working with smart people and learning from them, and I like to make a difference. So every promotion, every move in my career was always, hey, there's a problem or an opportunity in this part of the business. Go there and be part of that, right? And go lead that and go fix that. And so that's really how I've been able to move up. And I think it's not a bad perspective to just think, hey, problem or opportunity, go there, make a difference, make an impact, and look for the next one. Because that's, again, that's where you're going to be able to leave a lasting impression, grow yourself, grow people, and accelerate the business.
Yeah, that's something that I learned over time too. Especially where I like to think about the word value, right? It's always about like
Mhm.
solving problems,
Yep.
and that's what I really started to understand around like economics and being able to improve and hit my goals, whether it be network goals or you know starting up some type of business. It's always about how are you providing value, like what value are providing,
Right.
and
You kind of can't go wrong. If you're adding value, it can't go wrong. It might take longer. It may not be exactly how you vision it, but you're not wrong, right? So I think
absolutely.
that's a great point.
Absolutely. Was there a moment where your relationship with money or risk really started to change as you started to look for these opportunities or be asked to lead these opportunities?
Yeah, I think a couple of key inflection points, if you will. You talk about an acquisition. I've been through a couple in my career. Usually, if you're in the right position, right place at the right time, an acquisition or a merger can mean an influx of finances, right? Which is a wonderful gift. At the same time, when you think about tax implications and what you do with something that kind of comes all at once versus over time, you need to be really smart about it. So the first acquisition I was part of was one of those big catalysts for me to really understand finances and what do you do with an influx of funds, kind of unplanned, if you will, from a tax perspective, and how do you use that to help you in the later years, right? So things like DAFs, right, donor advised funds. That was my first learning of like, okay, I have this influx. What do I do to protect my monies and to keep them around? I also have three kiddos, so I need 529s, right, for their education. So that was an important, again, wonderful gift and catalyst for me to really think through tax implications, savings. How do I make this work for me in the long run versus giving it all, in taxes? So two big investment choices for me in that time frame was again a DAF, a donor advised fund, and 529s.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Um, what do you think separates people who accumulate capital from those who actually like deploy it well?
Hmm. Man, I mean, the good ones are doing both, right? It's a good question. I don't know what separates those people and their kind of thought process, but I definitely think those deploying are folks, at least in my network, that are always relevant, right? They're watching the market, they're seeing what's happening, so they're more active and more engaged, and maybe they have the bandwidth to do so versus those that are, maybe not as active or proactive, if you will.
Yeah, no, great, 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 great point. How do you personally think about risk today versus like earlier in your career? Has that changed over time?
For sure. I grew up Midwest, very conservative in financial views, so I had a very low risk tolerance early on. I think some fear based. I didn't know what I didn't know. A lot of dreams, right? I want a house. I want the kids. I want all these things in my life. So I think early on, which is probably reversed, right? In hindsight, I was very conservative, big emergency funds, right? Those sorts of things. And as I've grown in my career and grown in my finances, I'm much more comfortable with calculated risk. SpaceX IPO is a great example, very very recent that I got really jazzed about. I did a lot of work and a lot of research on, and that's pretty risky, some would say, but it also, if you look at Elon's track record, that's not a bad thing to follow. So it's definitely my risk profile has changed throughout my career.
Awesome. And what role does liquidity play for you now? I know you mentioned earlier you was, big in insurance, emergency funds and things like that.
Mhm.
How important is that for like predictability for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, I still have probably a conservative to most in terms of emergency funds and some liquid assets. For me right now, I have two girls in college, so even with a 529, you're having to pre-fund that. So I've got to have some liquidity right now because of my current family situation. But I do like, I mean, cash is still king in a lot of places, so I like to have that egg ready for me as a reassurance. But at the same time, when I see that often, it's like, man, that could be working for me in a different way. So I find myself challenging myself on what size, what ratio does that need to be? And again, always open to inputs and ideas and other perspectives, Michael.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then at this stage of your life, and I know, I was just talking to someone last week, and we kind of talked about the same situation, and I think you've experienced this as well. Your perspective or what you have to do is a result of your current situation, right? Even in this
Yeah,
entrepreneurship and businesses, right? We do
that's right.
certain things
Yep.
because of the current landscape. And I know with your kiddos and two in college, are at this stage now that you have them getting a little bit older, starting their lives, do you look at certain types of investments differently than you did before, or has that changed?
Absolutely. Again, I think I have more of a risk tolerance because I have a lot of the important things in my life set up, right? So I don't feel the need to kind of build as much, and I feel more comfortable with risk with my own finances. At the same time, something I'm really passionate about and learning more is custodial accounts and teaching those young humans what this other world is like, and just even little things like interest rates they don't necessarily naturally get, right? So they have a summer job. What are you doing with that? And so I love passing on my own experiences, my failures, my wins, how I look at the market, what a Roth can do for a kiddo and how they should be thinking about their own kind of savings. And so those are the two sides of the coin, my kind of my own financial independence and what the second half of my career looks like, and then passing on and evangelizing and sharing my experiences, again, good or bad, with the next set of of our generation trying to figure out how to have their money work for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I started this.
Yeah,
Not only does it help the network that I rub elbows with and growing at the same time, but we don't learn this in school, right? And
we
I
don't. That's right.
try to do
Yeah,
my best to educate my children. It's like, why can't I spend this money? It's like because you have to save it for another time. So
right. Well, you can, but here's the trade-off, right? I mean, you can do anything. Everything's a choice, right? Yeah, no, you're making a big difference. I appreciate you.
thank you, thank you. So how do you decide when something is like worth your attention versus like just noise?
Mm. If I had that figured out, I probably wouldn't be doing this. Very personal for me, actually, that question, because some of the things I'm curious about or I invest in are maybe brands or topics that I personally have a passion for. I'll give a great example. Not that we're giving stock advice, but I'm a huge Peloton fan and love the brand, love the instructors, love the vibe, love the energy. Not a great investment lately in the last few years. If I'd got in before COVID, it would have been great, but sometimes I do make some of these decisions or where to spend my time with my heart, which isn't always the best decision, but it's interesting to me, right? So from a learning and curiosity standpoint versus pure intellectual cerebral decisions, right, are more about, hey, let's look at the competition, let's look at the market, 52-week highs and lows if we're talking about stocks, or trends if we're talking about real estate, markets, where the economy going in these different regions. So those are more cerebral decisions that I attack more with my head than my
Yeah.
heart.
No, no, I love how you share that. Just talking to someone else again, we had about the same conversation. I thought was interesting. He quoted or mentioned Warren Buffett. It was like, invest in the things that you use, right? Like, we're big
That's the
Apple
thing.
people. Why don't you
Yep.
have Apple stock, right? Or, we really, what's another one that we really love to use? And I don't want to give away, but we all have
Right.
this smiley box popping up at a door, right?
That's right. All the
How
time. Yeah.
strong is that business? So yeah, it makes sense. And to your point, like maybe you want to do a little bit of both. Maybe you want to invest in your heart with some of the things that you're really passionate about, and then the cerebral part. I think Peloton was a great example, right? Great product, doesn't
Great
make
product. Poor timing on my part.
sense.
But again, I think they'll be scooped up. We'll see.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I'm pretty sure like somebody smart will figure out a way to
I
leverage that
think
brand.
so. There's a lot to work with. Yeah.
There is always a way.
hmm
Okay, awesome. So moving on to the custodial piece and more specifically the self-directed IRA. And I know we talked a little bit beforehand and you mentioned that you were curious about that.
Yeah.
And again, that's what I'm really excited about, and I
Yeah.
have my own reasons for why I really like the self-directed IRA and how we leverage it. But before this conversation, what did you think retirement accounts were limited to, or what's your experience with retirement accounts from that perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say even as of 10 years ago, probably it was just it's 401k, your employer takes care of it. And I've been in tech, B2B most of my career. So it was very much a hands-off trust kind of posture, if you will, which is scary, when you start digging in and what all the options are actually out there. And that's again why I just appreciate what you're doing, which is educating people. There are options. There's you can have more control, less control. There's so many things out there. And as a young engineer, to your point, we don't learn this in school. I had no finance teachings from an academic standpoint. So super smart in the book view, but the world view missing and having a lot of gaps. So for a long time, I just trusted my employer. Someone else handled the investments, and you did the employee match, and you just went along, and that was retirement, right? And now, of course, the world, my eyes open to the world of so many options, and so many wonderful opportunities to ensure that we're set up to keep living the lifestyles we love and see the world and get the experiences we want, with so many different retirement choices in the
Mhm.
market.
Now, how did you start? How did your eyes start to wake up? Was it more of just self curiosity? Was there some type
Mm,
of life event, or how did you start to investigate a little bit more or
yeah,
learn?
probably a combination of always wanting to learn. So curiosity for me is always going to be a component. Um, I think networking more, just talking with other folks, especially, wealthy individuals in my network and asking questions, right? How did you do this? What led you to this? And really, again, with that learning posture, and respect of, man, I respect what you've built. How did that go about? What does that look like for you? And you start to learn, wow, there's a lot more options out there. There are possibilities I didn't even know existed that I do have access to. Maybe not everything, but some of these things I also can do, right? So I think it's just anytime you see something you want, right, or that's interesting to you, start asking questions. How'd you get that? What does that look like? Do I have access to that? How do I get in that circle? To your point, who are you rubbing elbows with? And that's where I just start opening my eyes a bit more.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a similar situation happened to me when I first got into real estate, and I was trying
Hmm.
to learn, trying to, get my own property or purchase an asset. And someone had mentioned to me, and he was obviously a seasoned investor. He said, "Mike, you can get a self-directed IRA and do this."
You're
And I
like, what? What's that?
yeah, like, oh, I could use my 401(k). He was like, yeah. He was like, call your custodian and ask them,
Mm-hmm.
you can use those funds to purchase a property. I was like, oh, I can purchase a property. Once I did a little bit more research, and I was with Fidelity at the time, which is a
Okay.
common custodian.
Yep.
I was in IT as well. And it's yeah, we're self-directed. All right, absolutely, you can use our funds. You can buy these REITs on the stock market. And I was like, well, no, I want to buy this property. I don't want to buy
Right.
REITs in the stock market. He said, oh no, we can't do that. And I said, well,
Ah.
I Googled that you guys are a self-directed IRA. He's like, yes, we're a self-directed IRA in the sense that you can self-direct what stock options you want to choose, but you
But
cannot choose
not into real estate. Mm-hmm.
alternatives is the terms that they used. So
Mm,
that's
okay.
when I started to realize that there was a unique, distinct difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oftentimes, most people, when they hear self-directed IRA, they're thinking about their standard retirement account, whether it be a 401(k) or a 40, a 401(b) if you're in a nonprofit. These
Mm-hmm.
are typical retirement accounts. A self-directed IRA account are held with various custodians. And
Mm-hmm.
the big difference is not only can you invest in the stock market, right? But you can invest in alternatives. You could lend to someone like me. You could purchase an asset. You could purchase a business. Some of them now you can purchase crypto. You can purchase gold. You can
Mm-hmm.
invest in a Russian racehorse. So that is where the term self-directed comes from. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a powerful tool because sometimes, most of the time, these individuals that really go down the road in the self-directed IRA, they're usually tired of the big swings in the stock
That's
market.
right. Right.
Um,
Right.
and you may get access to private lending opportunities where the returns are a little bit better and more predictable, um, which comes with its own amount of risk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and so that's kind of like what we are charged to do here is
Yeah.
have more conversations about that and inform people that these opportunities are available. And another way that most people typically find out about it is usually they will move from an employer, and then
Mm.
funds that they were investing in their 401(k) doesn't roll over automatically. So now instead of what most of us do is we'll take that and just roll it over into the new employer, but then you have the option of putting that into a self-directed IRA account. And that's what I was able to do when I first got introduced to custodians, not knowing what I didn't know. I remember my money was just sitting in I forget the name of the SunTrust account that they just moved it into, and I had no idea it was sitting there. And I kept getting all these,
Wow.
yeah. And then I
Scary,
was,
right? It's like that's
yeah,
again, to my point, that's your hard-earned money that you missed maybe a birthday for or an event, right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening with that. When
had no idea all of that cash was just
yeah,
sitting. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
that's usually how individuals may get involved with a custodian like that, or they'll just open one up and start funding it on their own, unless they're at a retirement. event where they can then roll it over automatically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would would uh would that be something that you would want to learn more about? Or is that something that you have had some heard about before in the past? Or
I don't know about her. Again, probably the same experience as you, more of a shock of like, oh wow, what's happening with this, and do I feel good about it? Even if it is good, I think we always want to be aware and again being knowledgeable. So not knowing is not a place I personally ever want to be, especially again when it comes to my family or my finances. So for sure that experience. And then, yeah, in terms of learning more, there's so many areas, there's so many things we can invest in and help. And if we go back to the kind of heart and head element, sometimes it might be a heart piece. Maybe there's someone in my network, I believe in their business, right? Or their small business or an individual. So yeah, investing in them would be fascinating. Or cerebral, to your point, real estate, right? There's one thing we can't make more of, and that's the dirt on this planet, right? And so this is a strong consideration, and it's not so easy to do right through the traditional channels, the Fidelities, the Schwabs, the Robin Hoods, right? So certainly interested in
yeah,
that, and I don't have a lot of experience in that.
yeah, yeah. Staying along with like passive lending and retirement accounts, why do you
Yeah.
think retirement capital often aligns better with like passive investments versus like active ones?
Again, I think it's so dependent on the individual, right, and their lifestyle. Kind of going back to an earlier discussion of how much bandwidth does the individual have, and a risk profile too, right? So risk profile and bandwidth, I think, is equally equivalent to how much proactive and engagement they want to have. So maybe in that retirement space, hey, that person is in a place where they're enjoying life, or they're at the top of their career and they need it to be more passive and kind of trust that it's going to keep building, right? And they're comfortable with a reasonable but conservative rate of return, 70%, right? Or hey, I did all that work, I did the calculators, right? All the systems have these calculators. I'm going to live till I'm 96 and it's going to work out great. And here's my lifestyle, right? So I feel like that answer is so dependent, Michael, on the lifestyle and the situation.
Mm,
But I'm guessing you're pulling from, hey, statistically, this is kind of a trend we're seeing. And I could guess at why that might be.
yeah, no, no, great response. And do you or have you often got involved in like any type of private lending, passive lending before in the past, or are you more of a like a traditional investor, like a SpaceX, for example, or
Right. Yeah, I think historically I'm more traditional. I'd say in the last year or so I've looked at some, if we want to categorize that as non-traditional, and looking at again more private lending as an option, looking at some real estate ideas as well. Again, just knowing I have a little more flexibility. Again, my family's taken care of. The kids' school is has a path, and that's a big nut with three kiddos in college. And so now I can be more, in my mind, more risk tolerant and have some more options, and try some other things that actually will likely be more lucrative, but maybe I didn't have the bandwidth or the risk tolerance in the past to do so.
yeah, no, makes total sense. And from your perspective, what would you consider like a good passive investment today?
Hmm. Shouldn't I be asking you that? You're the one with all that data. It's so funny. I
Well,
do this.
I'll answer your question from my perspective, and I'm a bit biased because I'm in the real estate space, right?
Right.
And so, for me, I always tell people a good passive investment is something where it's backed by an asset or a collateral, right? So
Okay.
that you can
Yeah.
liquidate it
There's a thing. Yep.
in the time of need, um,
Hmm.
and you can get a good rate of return, right? Maybe
Yeah.
more than what you would get in the stock market, right? And usually that then lends itself to private lending opportunities that someone may or
Right.
may not have access to. That's how I would answer that question. And again, that's because I'm biased. I'm an
Right.
operator, and I'm always the one creating these opportunities for others. But I'm always
Right.
interested to hear others' experience who may have not had those types of opportunities to do private lending,
Right.
because I learn as well, right? I do some passive investing, and I'm always looking for
Yeah.
some diversification. And it helps, the
I
audience.
would say my bias on that side is also clear on the traditional side, right? So for me, passive is an ETF, right? A JEPI or an SRLN or one of those that's like, okay, it's safe, it's big, it's reliable, it's got history. That to me is passive. Although it's funny, right? That's a often Claude search. It's like, all right, what should I be doing that's more passive? And again, we know passive is not no work. That's not what that means.
I've learned that the
But
hard way. Absolutely.
but man, I wish it was. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's what I'm looking for.
Uh,
Hmm.
so what advice would you give someone that's sitting on like a large retirement account
Mm,
who feels
yeah,
stuck with like some of the options that they may be exposed to at a specific time?
I love that. And I think, first it's, hey, the fact that you're looking around and thinking about it is step one, right? You're not just kind of sticking your head in the sand and trusting, because there are other choices out there. And as we said earlier, it's all a choice. But I think educate, some of the tactics you and I have just talked about. Ask your network, ask people you respect or look up to, what are they doing, right? This People are, I've found, so generous with advice, and what's worked for them, again, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But man, if you ask folks in that respectful manner, they're really excited about what works for them, and they're happy to share that success story with others. And so I think that's a great place to start. So growth mindset, ask
Mm,
questions, have a curious posture, and ask your network or folks that you look up to, and you'll be surprised, I think, how generous they are with information and advice.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. For me, it was like reading books, right? Because I didn't
Mm,
network at the time. I just know that I wanted more, and man, the wealth of information and oftentimes I think for me it was just a paradigm shift, right? Just thinking
mm.
differently
Just how
and
you thought about it.
yeah, and being exposed. And it's just a shame that, money and finance and wealth building is such a taboo topic that we don't have more open conversations about it. But hopefully this helps change the narrative.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. And I'll just insert my passion point that you now know, Michael, which is, not only is wealth building taboo, I feel like, at least in my networks, with career females, it's really taboo. Like they're scared to death to talk about the topic, and I don't know why. But I love that your channel's getting out. I love your content's getting out to more people, and I just want to encourage folks to take control of their own destiny here. You worked hard for every single dollar that you made, and make sure that it's working for you.
that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to talk more offline. We're
Mhm.
at the round robin. All right. So I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
and I want you to just tell me the first thing that pops in your head. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Favorite or best book you ever read?
Oh, it's so hard. There's so many. Actually, Good to Great. I'll go to business book.
Oh, I
Old
like that
school.
one. Great. Yes. Okay. Best investment for under $500.
Fly. It's a local aerospace company here in Austin.
Ooh. Okay. Um, Best advice you've ever received.
Mm. From my friend Michael, add value and you can't be wrong.
I like it. I like it. It's all about. And then, what advice would you leave for your children?
Mm. Stay curious. Again, most people, most things are good. And so I think just stay curious and be open minded and open hearted.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Shelly, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, this was amazing. And for those of you who are watching live or who are watching the recording, if this conversation resonated, please share it with someone who's built success and is now thinking more intentionally about how to deploy their capital. And if you're curious to learn more about the self directed IRA, there will be some materials below. Thank you for your time. We'll see you on the next episode of Deploy.